I rise today to recognise the 60th anniversary of the Freedom Ride, an event that changed the course of history by exposing the racism, exclusion and hardship experienced by Aboriginal people in regional New South Wales. And as we know, a group of University of Sydney students, led by the late Dr. Charles Perkins, set off on the 15-day journey through country New South Wales across the state. They saw firsthand the appalling conditions faced by Aboriginal people: returned servicemen banned from RSL clubs, families forced to live in tin shacks with mud floors, and children denied access to public swimming pools. The Freedom Riders did not simply bear witness to injustice, they challenged it. They held placards outside the Walgett RSL demanding equal treatment for Aboriginal ex-servicemen. They stood outside Moree's segregated swimming pool, refusing to leave until Aboriginal children were allowed to enter. They exposed the racial divide in country towns, forcing the nation to confront a reality too long ignored. Their courage captured national and international attention, shifting public sentiment and laying the groundwork for the 1967 referendum, where over 90% of Australians voted to recognise Aboriginal people in the Constitution. Today, we commemorate their bravery, but true commemoration is more than words. It is action, and so we must ask ourselves what has truly changed. Yes, the overt segregation the Freedom Riders protested against may be gone, but many of the deep inequalities they sought to end remain. In some areas, the situation has even worsened. The Closing the Gap data makes this clear. Life expectancy for Aboriginal people is still significantly lower. Children removal rates have increased. Aboriginal youth remain grossly overrepresented in the justice system, and suicide rates among First Nations people are rising. Overcrowded and inadequate housing remains a reality for too many Aboriginal families. These are not just statistics, these are real people, real families, real communities, people who are still waiting for the change they were promised. Recognition must be paired with action. The government has announced blue plaques from the Freedom Ride route and the completion of a Freedom Ride pavilion in Walgett. These are welcome initiatives, but we must remember that the Freedom Riders did not take to the road for plaques and monuments. They rode because Aboriginal children were excluded from opportunity. They rode because Aboriginal communities were denied basic rights. They rode because justice had been delayed for far too long. Where do we go from here? So in 2024, the Productivity Commission review of the Closing Gap was clear. Governments are failing to deliver on their commitments, and progress is far too slow. If we are serious about honouring the Freedom Riders' legacy, we must work towards real, measurable change. Youth justice reform. Aboriginal young people remain overrepresented in detention. Reducing child removal. Culturally safe healthcare, and closing the education and employment gaps. Aboriginal children still do not have equal access to education. Year 12 completion rates are still behind. University completion rates remain lower, and employment targets are not being met. 60 years ago, the Freedom Riders stood in the blistering heat outside the Walgett RSL, determined to be heard. They were pelted with rotten fruit in Moree and jeered at in country towns and chased out of town by a convoy of cars. And yet they stood firm. They believed in something greater, a future where Aboriginal people would be equal in opportunity, in dignity, in life. Today, we must ask ourselves, are we honouring their courage or just remembering it? Commemoration is important, but history demands action. So let us ensure that in another 60 years, Aboriginal children are still not fighting the same battles. Let us ensure our words are matched with real action, and let us commit here today to finishing the work the freedom writers started.